Charlie, you and I spoke before the tournament, and one of the things you had mentioned was, Oregon State hasn't played a lot of games. Now, after this game against Oregon, Oregon State gets the win. Oregon also continues to kind of trend a little bit downwards. What does this mean for both teams heading into the tournament to you?
Well, I think for Oregon State, it certainly means that they're in the field. I would have thought that anyway. With the caveat, as you mentioned, Roz, is the lack of games that they've had. We know the committee kind of mentioned during the first top 16 reveal that they did back in mid-February that some teams that didn't get a lot of games in were impacted, and maybe that's why they weren't in the top 16 at that time. So I have to kind of carry that thinking into the whole process and as we get closer to Selection Monday. So I have a tinge of worry about the Beavers in their lack of games played. I don't think at this point any realistic person could leave them out of the field based on the way they're playing now, and that's certainly an important criteria too. Is kind of what have you done for me lately? And Oregon State's done as much as pretty much anybody in the country in the last few weeks. So I think this win solidifies anything that Oregon State may have had to worry about, and it kind of takes away a little bit of that concern about the number of games they've played. Oregon has been in the field since we started doing this, never was really a concern. I think the bigger concern for Oregon just is what do they have in the tank going into the NCAA tournament? Do they even have the kind of confidence to be able to win a game there, or how are they going to compete in the NCAA tournament? But they're going to be in the field. The committee has really looked favorably on Oregon, even during the midst of kind of this downward cycle that the Ducks have been on. In the last top 16 reveal, Oregon was in it, and I frankly didn't think they would be, and they were. So the quality net rating that Oregon has, which was 10 coming into today, has certainly benefited them. And the idea that usually the committee looks at how many good wins do you have, and the fact that really Oregon has no top 25 net wins, it still hasn't seemed to hurt them up to this point. The committee may look at them differently now, but that was less than a week ago that we were looking at this top 16 reveal and Oregon was still in it. So I think they've gotten some favorable outlook from the members of the committee. So being in the field is certainly not an issue. Are they going to be a 5 seed now? Are they going to be a 6 seed? I still have them as a 5, but I think they're very susceptible now to slipping to a 6 based on what some other teams right behind them are going to be able to do here coming up in the next few days.
Hey, Charlie, all of the Cougar Nation out there wants to know if this is the year that Wazoo finally gets into the tournament for the first time since 1991. They've beaten Arizona, they've beaten UCLA, they beat Oregon State, they have an overtime loss to UCLA, they've been very competitive. Their net ranking is in the 40s. Where do you see this Cougar team now after beating Utah in the first round of the tournament and having Arizona here today?
Well, I have them even safer into the field right now than when they came into today. And it really didn't have anything to do with them beating Utah last night. It had more to do with Mississippi State losing to LSU in the first round of the SEC tournament early on. Mississippi State's one of those teams that's really sliding. And I had to slide them down below Washington State based on the result of today. So that gives maybe the Cougars a little bit of a cushion. The resume is really interesting. And I think in a normal year, when we be talking about a team that's just over 500, but has a few really good wins, but has some losses that make you scratch your head, the Cougars maybe would be on the outside looking in. But as we've discussed, this is anything but a normal year. And those big wins, I think, will carry some weight. They could really use a win over Arizona. That would put a stamp on this, and it would certainly say to the committee that the wins they had earlier in the year were by no means flukes, that this is that kind of team. This is an NCAA tournament quality team. So a win today would really help. But a loss I don't think is detrimental. They're just in that window, though, where they'd be susceptible perhaps to some funky things happening in some other tournaments around the country. And as long as that doesn't happen, I think the Cougars should be fine being in the field.
All right, one more before we let you go because we're almost out of time. We got to ask you about Stanford, and you have your pulse on kind of the entire country. We get focused on the Pac-12 obviously here. So in your mind, is Stanford a team that could run the table and go win a natty this year?
I do. And interesting little story. I mean, I was out and about somewhere here. I'm actually in Las Vegas myself. Just Not at the Mandalay Bay right now, which is where I'd like to be. But I was out and about, and someone who knows what I do here asked me who do I thought was going to win it all. And it took me a few minutes to really think about it because I think it's that wide open this year. But Stanford was the team I landed on. The combination of experience and depth and coaching and players that kind of know how to handle this type of environment, because, well, who's going to know how to handle the environment in San Antonio better than Stanford, given what they went through at the beginning of the season. And I think that's going to be a big factor with all of the good teams, is maybe not who's the best team, but who handles the uniqueness of being in this quasi bubble and not being able to really do anything outside of eat, sleep, and play and practice basketball. And as I said, Stanford has the experience unlike any other team in the country. So that's kind of why I landed on the Cardinal as my national championship pick. But don't hold me that, because 3 days from now I could have a totally different
Fair enough. It's all about what have you done for me lately, and you just picked Stanford to win the Natty, so that's good. And we'll leave you with that.